Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to Something Old, Something New. This is David.
And Salome.
And this is the podcast where we choose two films, one old, one new, that have something in common. What that is depends on the film. And so for today's episode, we are focusing on Paul Thomas Anderson's 1999 release of Magnolia and Dan Fogelman's 2018 release of Life Itself.
Not to be confused with the documentary.
With Roger Ebert's memoir, which was then adapted into a wonderful documentary that was released a couple of years ago. That's, if you haven't seen that Life Itself, I highly recommend it. This Life Itself, I actually do recommend it, but in the sense of this is one of the worst films I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't fond of it.
That's
that's it. I wasn't fond of it.
Good night.
Well, here's the thing, though. Like, we cannot, ignore the fact that what's the director's name again?
His name is Dan Fogelman, because that's the interesting connection. Because I picked those films because while watching Life Itself, I kept thinking of Magnolia in terms of but I couldn't quite put my finger on it beyond the idea of all these stories interconnecting, drama, bits of comedy here and there. But it actually goes more deeper in that. Yeah,
I mean, when I was watching the movie, it really reminded me, because I didn't know who the director was by name, I should say. Mm-hmm. So when I kept watching it, I'm like, this reminds me of something. And I've never seen Magnolia before. Mm-hmm. So, before watching Life Itself first.
Yes.
So I was just watching, like, what is this reminding me of? I mean, like, it's
reminding
me of, yeah. Okay. I'm like, it reminds me of a lesser version of This Is Us. And then I start Googling, and lo and behold.
And after doing some research.
I found out that the director of Life Itself is also the creator and writer of This Is Us.
Yep, Dan Fogelman.
Yeah, and that show is one of my favorite shows of all time. It's such a good constructed show. And the reason I point that out is because it follows the same theme and structure in the movie. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, it's not executed correctly,
Yeah, and just to let it out there, what these films are about, that Magnolia is told over the course of a day in Los Angeles, California. You would say like around like Hollywood and all that area, where you follow the stories of 9 characters and how they're interconnected, but dealing with drama, with regret, with forgiveness, with, in this case, with parental neglect, child abuse that comes to the forefront, and Life Itself. And in this one, I'm going to be not to be as cynical as I possibly can, because I do consider it one of the worst films I've ever seen, but I'm being very polite about it. It is about life itself. I'm sorry, I'm doing it.
No, technically, he is right. I mean, it is about life itself. The movie talks about 4 generations of families, essentially, right?
Yep.
So it's like, and it has these connections. It talks about like how. Oh God, what's the term that they use about narrative?
Well,
false narrative, or
they refer to it as a unreliable narrator.
Unreliable narrative. And here's the thing, though, that's the same thing with This Is Us a little bit, because it's like not everything is as it seems until you get all the facts and look behind, like the initial story. And in Magnolias, you kind of get that sense as well. Like with Tom Cruise's character, you're like, oh God, this guy's a complete dick or whatever. Look at him trying to show off or whatever. But there's a deeper hurt behind everything.
Yes.
So it's like, and the same thing with Life Itself. Like okay.
You're struggling.
I'm struggling because here's the thing, though. The director, he's a great director. He's a great writer. The actors in the movie, Olivia Wilde, Oscar Isaac, which yum, but like, I'm sorry, I know all y'all ladies agree with me, and men too, of course. He's eye candy, but like, the acting is great. It's fine, it's servable. Like, I know you're giving me a look, but I don't care. I disagree with you on this one. Like, the acting was fine. It's just Oscar Isaac. I think he was really great in the movie, but there was just too many plot twists and not enough time for us to grasp the fact that it was a plot twist. Mm-hmm. And that, I think that was one of its biggest failures, But when we were looking at the backstory to why he wrote the movies and at what time period he wrote the movies, it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, what time he wrote that movie, yeah.
Yeah, because he ended up writing it when the first season or the pilot of This Is Us came out. So he started writing this movie before that came out, and it clicked for me. I was like, that's why this movie felt this way. It felt like a failed version of This Is Us.
Yeah.
You know? And then that he was finally able to make This Is Us and make it a big production, but this is a movie that never was made, but it actually was made.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it feels like we're watching it, is that you do get this sense of, with life itself, that it feels like it could have been a better television show to be able to expand on certain ideas, on characters and such. Now, going into the backstories of the films, that the other one is with Magnolia. The backstory of it is that Paul Thomas Anderson was developing his experiences with his father Ernie Anderson passing away from cancer, and you do get that sense of it. But it's also like, okay, you got these both similar backgrounds in terms of where these scripts were. With Dan Fogelman, it was the loss of his mother when he was 30 years old, or
and
31.
he met his wife a year after that happened, which is the reason why he wrote Olivia Wilde, to the day, which makes sense as to why he wrote Olivia Wilde and Oscar Isaac's couple, like their chemistry. The reason why he wrote him that way is because he was reflecting his own relationship with his wife as well. So it makes sense. Like you can see, like when you hear the backstory, it makes sense, and you're like, oh, I can see it. But was it executed correctly?
Yeah, and that's where and this is why when watching Life Itself, I have to confess, I was really angry while
putting it lightly.
I was very, very mad because it felt like that they were taking these incredibly serious subject matters that was occurring, and what happened is that they treated it as if it was a joke. It felt like it was being silly. Like, for example, the film opens up with Samuel Jackson doing this narration. He's like, oh, look at our guy right here. And he's like, let's move in on him. Then it cuts to him going, hello, move in there, move in, camera. And the camera moves in. And it sets you aback. It's like, wait, why are we doing this? It's like, and then you see, I mean, that's a conceit that the filmmaker is trying to do. And then you look at the conceits that Paul Thomas Anderson does. Like, for example, in Magnolia, in the film, when all of these things are already occurring, it cuts to a film about 2/3 of the way in, where all the characters, the main characters, sing Wise Up from Amy Mann, which we'll get into further detail about Amy Mann. Yeah. And it's a beautiful moment, but it's earned. Because it builds up to it. It doesn't just flat out go, we're going to go do this.
Well, okay, before we move forward, I will disagree with the beginning scene of Life Itself. Because when we first started watching it, I knew nothing about the movie. I didn't see the trailers. I didn't know what it was about, honestly.
You laughed.
I did laugh because I thought that's what the whole movie was going to be like.
Yeah.
It set it up, I think it set it up really funny in a great way of kind of it really reminded me of this indie movie that I love called Archie's Final Project.
Yeah, we had a discussion about that.
So it's that's why I was like, ooh, it's gonna be that kind of movie where it's kind of sarcastic but really talk about deep issues, mental issues, and just tragedy in life. But then it does a really weird twist. Which is the first twist of the movie.
This film has a number of twists whereby at the end of the movie, I
cannot keep up.
Your eyes will either roll out of the socket or you're going to throw up.
Yeah, and after the first twist happens, and then you realize that Oscar Isaac, his character, he was actually making up, he was writing a screenplay, which is what you saw in the first 5 minutes of the film.
And he's obsessed with Tarantino.
He's obsessed with, which I kind of saw the ode to him, which was fine. I didn't mind it. And I was like, oh, twist. Okay. I mean, that pisses me off a little bit, but okay, let's see where this is going. I still don't mind it. Okay, okay. But then, lo and behold, another fucking twist. And then I'm just like, okay, here's another twist. That's fine. Okay. I just started getting used to the idea that it was the first twist ended up not being this, but okay, fine, whatever. Let's see where it goes. Then I'm starting to get adjusted. Guess what happens? Y'all, do you understand what happens? You know what happens, David? Another freaking twist. So I'm just like, okay.
And then also it's those moments of these coincidences that occur. There's one big one that just a spoiler for everyone. This is what happens.
Yeah, we're spoiling it. Forget it.
What happens is that Oscar Isaac's wife, played by Olivia Wilde, who's pregnant, and she gets hit by a bus. And
while she's pregnant,
she dies. She gives birth to the kid. Oscar Isaac kills himself because he's mentally depressed, lost, what have you.
That's fine.
And then the girl, we see her age till she's 21 years old, and she's become a bad seed, a poorly developed, Bad Seed, Rebellious, with her silly PB&J band. But anyways, then what happens is this. There's a boy on the bus who is visiting America, where his family's from Spain, I believe.
I think it was Spain, yeah.
And we see a background story to that involving Antonio Banderas.
Well, I loved him in the movie, though. I'm not going to lie. I love me some Antonio Banderas.
And what happens is that the boy goes through the psychological trauma, and has to go through that.
Reason why is because when he was on the bus, he's the one who distracted the driver, who ended up hitting Olivia Wilde. That's why he was traumatized. Yeah. Okay, you're laughing. Okay, this is a sad moment, but it's true. It was kind of funny because of the twist they end up doing, that he grows up, which, by the way, you do end up seeing part of his story, which I think was my least favorite part of the movie, which we'll get back to in a bit. But he ends up growing up. He becomes a university student in New York City, and guess what happens? David, tell them the twist.
He meets her, the girl, who is the daughter of Olivia Wilde and Oscar Isaac, and they fall in love, and they have a child, and that child turns out to be the second narrator, the most consistent narrator, who wrote a book called Life Itself. And
it's so dumb!
And that's where and by that point, here's the thing that bothered me, because then it's like, and then this happened, and that happened, and how life is the unreliable narrator. But there's me going, wait a minute, hold on a second. Was there ever a conversation that went, so what happened to your mother, my dear? Oh, well, she got hit by a bus when when she was pregnant with me, and I never knew her. I never knew my father because he killed himself. That's interesting, because when I went to America, I distracted this driver, and he hit a pregnant woman. Isn't that, I don't know about you, but that's going to cause a big moment to go, let's go sit on the therapist's couch.
Yeah, which is like, honestly, I would have found that to be a very interesting movie of like, how do you handle that in the relationship? Like the twists and turns and darkness of it all, because it's like, dude, you're the reason mom died, man. Like, even though it wasn't your fault, like it was unintentional, you were a child, and you were just talking to a driver. The driver shouldn't have just looked at you in the first place. He should have had his eyes on the road. So bad driver, bad. But the thing is, it's like, that would have been a huge psychological fuck up for her, who was already a fuck up to begin with. So it's like, but to show that, like, oh, they met, everything else melted, and they suddenly became like all pish posh, like in Italy, like sitting with nice dress. So I don't give a motherfucking shit where they were at. Like they were just
unknown European.
Some unknown. For a while, I thought they were in Mexico, though. So I was like, okay, so I don't understand what's going on, but whatever. I think it was Spain. I don't know. But they're sitting down in this fucking like olive field or whatever, and they're sipping on mimosas and some shit, and then her little daughter comes out, and they're all happy, like lovey-dovey, and I'm like, bitch, no, you killed my mom. You killed my mom. Like, I would be, you killed my mom. I don't get it.
And the thing is, we have to go back to Magnolia in terms of there are these
so grumpy now.
Like situation where you see like of circumstances and chance and coincidence, and the film begins with a lovely narration from Ricky Jay where he tells these three stories about Greenberry Hill, the murder of Greenberry Hill, the scuba diver who was found dead in the tree, of the successful the unsuccessful suicide becoming a successful homicide.
Yeah. Oh, here's the thing, though.
But it plays into that theme.
It does, because it set up the movie in such a way of how coincidences like kind of like linked together,
and these things happen all the time.
Life itself happens.
Yeah.
Anyways, sorry, I'm so angry.
But it does it in such a way where it's what Paul Thomas Anderson does through his filmmaking style. That I want to quickly mention this. We were watching his the documentary about the making of the film, which it's called That Moment, and he was talking in the background, in the behind the scenes, with his cinematographer Robert Elswit and production designers, one of them being Mark Bridges, who would go on to win an Oscar for costume design for Phantom Thread. Yeah, he's been working with Paul Thomas Anderson throughout their careers. They're both a successful collaboration, or an overdoll. That's right. Remember that film, Graham, from the Scary Stories Creepshow episode? It's an overdoll successful collaboration between two artists. But anyway, between artistes. But anyways, he talked about, like, his concern was he didn't want them to feel like separate stories, that it's one big cohesive story. And that's what works about Magnolia. As Roger Ebert once described it, it's an urgent film. It's a tense film. It's a long film, yes, over 3 hours long. But For me, it doesn't feel that because it goes from character to character, story to story. The tension builds and builds and builds. And how the camera moves, how the film is cut, it's all consistent. The problem with Life Itself is there is no consistency in terms of how it's edited, in terms of how it's staged, in terms of the visual conceits that it takes.
I remember I was telling you when we watched Life Itself, like, not only did it feel like a failed attempt at an ode to This Is Us, the TV show, which is funny because it's created by the same person, it also felt like I was watching a bad adaptation of a really good book. And when I was watching it, I was like, okay, because the kind of different stylistic approaches, it can work in a book. And it has worked in a book. We've talked about like different authors that have that kind of quirky style that's kind of like all over the place.
Well, also Paul Thomas Anderson, he knows because he directed like Thomas Pynchon. He directed a Thomas Pynchon novel, Inherent Vice, so he knows.
So he knows about that style, right? So it's like when watching Life Itself, it felt like they were trying to do that, but it became. And I remember I was talking to you about it. I was like, I wonder if this movie would have worked better if it was an anthology film, because the different style approaches, which were nonstop, like. I mean, like, please give it at least more than 3 minutes before you change styles. Like, it gave me anxiety more than anything. And that's why I'm angry at this film, because I see its potential. I see what it was talking about. I see what they were trying to do. And I've seen it work in other avenues by the same writer and director. But it's like, you're going too all over the place. It's like going back to how I told you that it reminded me of Archie's Final Project, that I see in Archie's Final Project, it's by a teenager. It's the story of a teenager who decides to film his suicide for his art project at school. So it's like, and it has that same style approach of like being very sarcastic and snarky, and then like kind of making it into a joke. And like when Oscar Isaac was talking to his therapist, it reminded me a lot about Archie's character talking to his therapist, and kind of going into this obscure world of like whether references are going into his own world and seeing it from the outside. And it's like, see, Doc, and like, see this and that. But seeing it from a grown ass man, I'm sorry, from a grown man,
like the film references,
and the film not saying that a grown man doesn't make film references. Hi, I'm seeing one right in the eye right now because you kind of live in that world, which is great. I love it, but the way it was approached and the way it was presented to the audience, we didn't get enough, like, I don't know, we weren't able to adjust to the fact that was his personality. So it's like with the movie Archie's Final Project, that was just like, he's a teenager, it makes sense, he's very snarky, he's going bam, 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 going and going. So it made me want to just go stop watching this film and go watch Archie's Final Project for same thing.
What it is that with Archie's Final Project, it is, in my opinion, it's a messy film. But that's what was so appealing to me while watching was how messy it was. It felt like it was a teenager film. That it went with that style and it ran with it.
And Life Itself, it felt that way, didn't it? Like if they were trying to do a teenager movie.
Well, trying to, but with Life Itself was like. Here's the thing.
For adults.
It has a lot of Tarantino references. And Oscar Isaac's obsessed with it, and so is Olivia Wilde. So you see them dressed as John Travolta and Uma Thurman from Pulp Fiction, including the needle sticking out.
I thought that was it was a cute scene,
It was maybe cute, but the thing is that it feels force-fed.
It was force-fed, and also the fact that they, like, again, the whole false narration. Oh, God, I can't talk. I'm so upset. The false narration of everything, like, that scene specifically would have been beautiful if they would have stick to, is Oscar Isaac really obsessed with her and she really didn't love him back? Or were they truly just in love? Or, because that's kind of a theme throughout the whole film if you guys watch it. If you guys watch it. I mean, we do suggest go watch it because it is interesting to see what
it needs to be seen to believed.
Yeah. And I've talked to some of my friends. They don't mind it. If you're a huge fan of romantic comedies, you might end up liking the structure and not mind it. But anyways, that's besides the point.
Wait, shout out to who? Should we do the shout out?
No, I'm just gonna keep them anonymous because I don't know if they want me to mention them by name.
But there was another friend of yours who couldn't get past 4 or 5 minutes.
4 or 5 minutes, yeah. So they couldn't. They're like, it was too much, all too soon, and we couldn't. But I completely forgot my train of thought, what I was saying earlier. But it's just one of those movies where you just watch it and you're just over it. And as we kept going, I just remembered something. Both of these movies had a sort of backlash, right?
Well,
and both directors ended up talking about them in different ways.
Yes, the thing is that when it comes to the films, that is Magnolia. Well, of the two, Magnolia definitely had a far more critical acclaim. It was nominated for 3 Academy Awards for Tom Cruise's performance, the Best Supporting Actor category. Where, quick aside, he should have won that Oscar because it's the best performance of his entire career. It was nominated for a screenplay and it was nominated for an original song by Amy Mann called "Save Me," which was played at the end, played over the final scene between Claudia and Jim. But there was there were people who were vocal detractors. Like when I watched Roger Ebert, there was one critic who got on. First name was Joyce, that she complained and she thought it was a mess, and Ebert countered that, saying like, no, the thing about the film is you're led to believe that it's this, but then something utterly unexpected occurs. And that is what's so great about the film, is that instead of preaching about life itself, it shows you about all these things that happen.
It felt very organic until the very end, like a random ass scene. But I still liked it. I still enjoyed it. But
with the backlash, though, I mean, then they did the worst films of 1999. Joel Siegel, another critic, declared it as one of the worst films. Of course, he and Ebert had a tete-a-tete about that.
Yeah.
And Paul Thomas Anderson featured on the documentary that he did. That moment when he was dating Fiona Apple, there's a moment where she's dancing around, and Paul would stop her and be like, no, like, don't do that. We don't understand what you're doing. And then she'd start dancing again. He's like, oh, stop doing it. Basically referring to the fact that they were critics in his mind that felt like, oh, what are you doing? You're being different. Like, don't do that. Mm-hmm. And with life itself, he came out, Dan Fogelman, very upset, declaring that certain white film critics were going against the film.
Oh, and I have something to say about that.
And that, of course, they wouldn't like something like this because they don't like emotion. And on one hand, I admit I'm a white male critic, and of course I hate the film. But emotion, oh my gosh, I
hate the film.
Well, I do hate the film, but the thing is, like, you give me a wonderful movie, I can cry at almost any type of movie. Far more
Remember
so
when you
than,
cried at Moulin Rouge?
Yeah.
And I'm all sitting there like a hard ass. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? No, the movie's beautiful.
Well, yeah, but for you, how do you respond?
Here's the thing. As a Latina female who's not a film critic, so I'm a target audience, as someone who's not a film critic, actually, I'm going to specifically talk about a certain segment. Mm-hmm. The segment for the people in Spain. There were Spanish speakers, like the story, and it's all cute and all, but I felt it was very, very misrepresentative of just Spanish culture, I guess. Like, it was kind of weird, like, because okay. I'm trying to get my thoughts together on this one because we were listening to an interview that he talked about This Is Us, right? Mm-hmm. And the interviewer asked him, you as a white male, how are you able to represent black characters so well without having them stand out but not be forgotten? And he was talking about, like, well, our first element is the fact that we're all human. Mm-hmm. Like, he's from a Jewish family, a big family that, like, kind of chaotic or whatever. And he was able to have that connection with just family. But then also he had other writers come in to give him the small details that matter. Mm-hmm. Like, and the one detail that he spoke about is, like, with one of the wife's characters who's African-American in the show, was like, why would she have this certain product on her bedstand? Oh, because as an African-American woman, she has to protect her hair, so she has to have a silk bonnet and have these kind of products, and these are the only kind of products that would work with this type of hair, and blah, blah. So it makes it very authentic,
right? It feels
right?
lived in.
It feels, yeah, exactly. It's very authentic. It feels lived in. It feels like someone not only hearing the culture but knows the culture, understands the culture because they were part of the culture, so it was a very beautiful, like, merge of different writers to, like, get that, to be realistic. Mm-hmm. He was missing that in this movie.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, like, yes, did you get the family aspect right? And, like, whether Hispanics or Latinos or, like, Spaniards are, like, known for being passionate and love and family, all great. Like, I don't want to say stereotypes, but yeah, it's a stereotype that is kind of true within, like, our cultures. So it's like, but the details were missing, and I kept feeling like, why can't I connect as I usually do with these kind of films? It's because the detailing wasn't there. And then I instantly started thinking of another movie that I love. It's called Under the Same Moon, Abajo de la Misma Luna, if you guys know it in Spanish. And that's what I was missing. Those small details that make your heart just want to grab it and just be like, yes, this is my story, or this is my neighbor's story. This is, our story of love and happiness and heartache and this, but it wasn't there, So for him to say that, oh, you guys don't like this film because you guys are white male film critics who don't understand. Hey, no, I'm the target audience here, and I'm a Latina female, and I still didn't get that connection. Now, that doesn't mean that we're knocking down your talent, because you are very talented in telling these stories.
Yes.
But the thing is, so far, his best work has been when he has collaborated with other people. Because let's not forget,
or allowed to expand the
idea, or if it was an animation. Because if you guys don't know, he also did a Tangled, if I'm not mistaken, right?
He did. I know that he did Cars.
He did Bolt. Cars and Bolt, and I think he did Tangled as well. And those are beautiful Pixar movies. They're animation.
One's Pixar, and the two are the Disney.
Whatever. I don't give a motherfucking shit. That's why you're the film critic, and I'm just the watcher. So, but yes, they're beautiful animation films, which led us to talk about would this concept has worked. Would have worked more in animation.
Yes.
That is that his strong suit, or like when it's live action, his strong suit seems to be when he's collaborating with other people.
Which actually, it's like, when we're talking about that, is I've mentioned this word often, that's conceit. And that is, let's take a little moment at the Film Grammar Corner, and that is...
Grammar Corner!
So what is conceit in terms of, because, people, when they hear the word conceit, I mean, obviously, when they're referring to like excessive pride, but when it comes to literature, or in this case in film, it is a fanciful expression in writing a speech. That's when it comes to literature, or an elaborate metaphor. This is how it's used in film. How many times have you seen the moment in a movie where you see a calendar and the page falls off? It says, May 1st, and this is May 2nd, then 3rd, it goes faster. Or you see the clock spinning. That's used to show a passing of time. That's one usage of a conceit. So in life itself, they would use a conceit is there are moments that are very reminiscent of Annie Hall, where Oscar Isaac is describing to Annette Bening about the therapist, about the things that happen in his life, and then you'll see them there, and you're like, oh, look at me, there's me in college, and oh, look how young I looked.
I'm like, you look exactly the same, dude. What are you talking about? And then, just shave. You look the same.
And the conceit is, aforementioned in, Magnolia, is that moment when they're all singing, Amy Mann's Wise Up. And why is it that one works and one doesn't? And that is, the one in Magnolia, it works because it's earned. Because at that moment, we've spent 2 hours with these characters, that we've experienced them in terms of their emotional trauma, the revelations that they've occurred, the pain that they've endured. We have gone with them, and we know who they are. They feel like they are three-dimensional characters that have their wants and needs and desires. With life itself, we're spending this time with an unlikable ass and a clueless therapist who's like, oh, she doesn't know Natalie Portman. And of course, that's really funny, because if you Oscar historians know, that Annette Bening lost her Oscar from Kids All Right to Natalie Portman for Black Swan.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because they actually were referencing that. They did a lot of references of the actors in the movie. Like, there was one reference when they were, Oscar Isaac and Olivia Wilde were in bed, and he does this Chewbacca thing. It's an ode to him being in Star Wars.
But why?
That's kind of the point. And like, they had a little other references here and there about stuff like that. And like, I get it. It's cute. And like, I know like with Antonio Banderas, I know there was like another like little clue in there, something about, because he was narrating and he was also narrator for Evita or something like that. So like they were doing little things here and there to kind of be like, oh, you're tied into. So it's like,
that's literally the dialogue.
Yeah. But like, so I get it. And I wouldn't have minded those little cute references if it was a better film.
Yeah.
But also talking about conceit and all that stuff like that, it reminds me of also why. So the movie life itself takes place in 4 different generations, basically, right? I didn't realize that until almost the end of the movie, because they didn't show how time passes. They didn't show how like everything seemed to be taking place in modern time, in present time. They never showed the fact that they were in different like time periods. They didn't show like different like ways of dressing or technology changes or anything. And that's why I got confused. I was like, oh, is this all taking place at the same time? Wait, she's suddenly, oh wait, that isn't, okay, that's the daughter then, but didn't this happen? Oh, so that was back in like 20 years ago. But wait, they look like they just, what?
And not to mention the fact that if you follow, you go, wait a minute, so this final story is told in the future, yet it looks like present day. They've done nothing. Of course, it would have been hilarious if it looked like the set of the Jetsons, but they didn't do anything to make it look like it was the future.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. I guess that when they met was supposed to be present time, like our time, I guess. No, even then, that doesn't make sense.
Because
I'm confused.
Wait a minute, because they
the
were
daughter...
born. They were born in when Olivia Wilde's character was born in 1985, and so.
So now she's 30 by the time she has
30,
kids.
so that's 2015. So then. She's
right?
21.
So 20 years from then.
So then that's 2036.
Right.
And then has another kid, so then that's 2070 or something like that?
Yeah, but guess what, y'all? Barnes & Noble still looks the same. So good for them. Good for them.
And they're still in business.
They're still in fucking business. Good. Yeah. Good for them. Like, I'm glad that, the fooder was told.
The fooder. Back to the fooder. I have to quickly touch upon this, and that is the Tarantino obsession. And that is also because... and this is one of those available in the archives, something old, something new. Check out our episode where we talk about Reservoir Dogs and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Episode 2, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we're talking about Quentin Tarantino's, how unique he is as a writer and as a director, his voice. And Paul Thomas Anderson, he himself is very unique in terms of his voice, not just visually, but also in terms of the dialogue. And why is it that the dialogue in Paul Thomas Anderson's films work and Quentin Tarantino's films work, but the dialogue in life itself doesn't work? And that is, and first to get this out of the way, and that is, one rule of thumb is this. If you're going to be referencing, other movies and such, please be as good or try to make an effort to be as good. Because it makes you want to watch the other movie. Because watching life itself is like, gee, I wish I was watching Pulp Fiction.
Also, I just remembered another, little thing that they're trying to do the connection with Oscar Isaac and Natalie Portman. Because he was mentioning, the marathon to watch a marathon of Natalie Portman movies. But he also played... her husband in a movie, if you guys remember, I think it was Annihilation or something like that. Oscar Isaac played Natalie Portman's husband, so they were trying to reference that in the movie Life Itself.
Yeah, too, it's references for the sake of references, and that's the key, and that is how, for example, when it comes to dialogue. With Paul Thomas Anderson, there are many moments throughout those films where characters will say something, but it's built up. For example, there's a line where Claudia states, after she kisses Jim, that's a line from a Amy Mann song. It's, quoted. It's something along the lines of, now that we've met, would you object to never seeing me again?
Yeah, such a beautiful line.
Yeah, but at that moment, it's earned. It isn't like every character talks that way. But the problem is with life itself is every single character talks in these weird little ways and such, these mannerisms that doesn't feel natural.
Yeah, it was very unrealistic. It's what people think. It felt like if there's aliens and they were writing a play about humans, but they haven't met a human before, but they've watched movies that they thought that that's how he talked, so they wrote him that way. Yeah. That's how it felt like to me. I'm just like, I don't know anyone that maybe Oscar Isaac, we see little parts of ourselves that do that, but no one's exactly like that. If they are, y'all are assholes. So it's that's kind of it's I'm not connecting here. What is it?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. He has written characters like that in TV shows, but why is it working there? Is it because it's a TV show? It's because you're able to stretch out the story long enough, and that way, when the moment hits, it really does hit, and it is earned.
Yeah.
And in this movie, it felt like they were trying to throw it all into just
a 2-hour package,
which probably should have just been 30 minutes at this point. I'm sorry. Again, not knocking down his talent, because he is a talented director and writer. This movie itself, which by the way was voted the worst movie of 2018 by Time Magazine.
You mean 2018?
What'd I say?
19.
Oh, whatever.
Well, shoot,
I don't care. It might as well have been.
Actually, honestly, folks, the film is so terrible. It might as well be the worst film of 2019.
And I hate saying that, because I'm not one of those people that really like to knock on films like that. But sometimes it's kind of hard to not take it personally when it felt like my time was wasted.
Yeah.
And it's it
felt that way.
It felt that way, and it kind of felt like I was just dipped. I forgot what term you guys are, but I was screwed over. I was like, you all made me waste 2 hours of my day just sitting here watching this, hoping that's going to turn somewhere, and you just turn it somewhere completely different, which I know movies are tended to do that, and Magnolia kind of did with, like, in the first 3 minutes when they were talking about those first 3 stories that you're talking about. Like, I felt that was a perfect way because they showed, like, hey, you know, life happens. It's just twist and turn, bam, bam, bam. We're going to throw it to you within the first 3 minutes, but then guess what? We're going to ease into the rest.
Yeah.
So that way you're on your edge of your seat and you're like, where's this going? However, my one critique about the movie, 2 critiques actually, I personally can't sit through a 3-hour film. It kind of,
true.
You know?
I mean, even Paul Thomas Anderson has said that he would, like, you know, looking back, that he would go back and cut it. But the thing is that how it is as a film is, like, it's very hard to take out elements of it. Like, maybe you could just condense the scene here or there, but for the most part, it's like
everything was worth it.
It makes it worth it. But
see, that's what I was gonna say though. Like, even though it was 3 hours, like for me personally, you know me, like my attention span just like whatever. But on this one, by the time I was starting to lose interest, it grabbed me with something else. And that is a brilliant writer and filmmaker.
I want to go into, like, the acting, in particular how Paul Thomas Anderson works with his actors. The thing with him is that while watching him as being interviewed and in behind the scenes, that Paul Thomas Anderson creates this family between this good rapport, not only between him and his production team, but also between him and his actors, that you just watch as how they interact with one another, and that you get this sense that he loves working with them, and that he has so much confidence in his actors. Like, I remember
they trust each other.
Yeah, I remember just watching a scene where he's directing Jeremy Blackman, who plays the character of Stanley in the film, who's a young boy, and how he directs him, and how he's moving and watching him as if he's blocking the scene, as if he's the camera.
Oh yeah.
And after the scene ends, because they're doing this rehearsal, he, like, applauds, and he's so happy with the kid and with Jeremy's work. He makes him feel so good about himself, and
it makes them feel confident in their work, which in turn gives them a great performance.
And you get those confidence. It's like, I mean, also one other example, I have to point this out in terms of his confidence in his actors. There's a scene at the end, because this is to tell what happens, is Tom Cruise is in the film, and he plays a character called Frank T.J. Mackey, whose real name is Jack Partridge. The reason why that's important is because he is the son of Earl Partridge in the film, played by Jason Robards, who's dying of cancer, and his wish is, as he's dying, is to see his son before he dies. Yeah. But the relationship is strained.
Ooh, I got chills just thinking of that, because it's such a good scene.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. The relationship is strained because when Jack was 14 years old, his mother died, Lily, of cancer in 1980, and his father wasn't there. By that point, we don't know whether they were separated or divorced or what have you.
Yeah,
but
he wasn't there.
He wasn't there. And then he changed his name to Frank T.J. Mackey, and he's this guy who... And it's so funny because the film itself came out in 1989, which surprised Salome because she thought it came out recently, because the film
like if anything, like 2008 or something.
Toxic masculinity that's coming out through his Seduce and Destroy program to teach these losers.
So relevant to this day,
Yeah, to teach these losers how to essentially, and Paul Thomas Anderson acknowledges, do these awful things with women to abuse them. And there's this wonderful scene in an interview with April Grace's character, I believe is the actress's name.
I think so.
That she's interviewing, and she reveals to him that, you know, the truth. And he, of course, that's when everything unravels. And it comes down to him wising up and doing the right thing, going to see his father on his deathbed. And what happened is Tom, leading up to the film, he went up to Paul and he goes, "How do you know this?" And Paul goes, "Excuse me?" Tom goes, "How did you know all this about me and my father?" Because what happened was Tom's relationship with his dad was strained, and that he only, if memory serves, only saw his dad twice ever since his father left the family. When he was 15 years old, and when his dad died on his was on his deathbed, was dying. Tom's father never got to see the success that his son would achieve. Yeah. And how they were doing it and filming it, Tom said to Paul, "I know this isn't really working with me, the dialogue." And so Paul goes, we'll do it, just speak from the heart, what you wanted to say. Just think of it as this is your father. And what you're seeing filmed, that one take of Tom, not just seeing Frank T.J. Mackey, Jack, the young boy, seeing that 14-year-old boy finally cry and lament of all that pain that he had to endure. You're seeing Tom Cruise break down in front of you and cry, and it's like the most moving, emotional scene. And it's like you watch it and you go, how in the world did he not win the Oscar for that? But also, pay attention. This is also how great Paul Thomas Anderson is as a director. Look in the background. Look at Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, Phil Parma, who plays a part of hospice care, who's taking care of Earl.
Yeah, he goes his own little...
Yeah. And you see him as he reacts to, as Jack will initially say, you prick. And you see his head go down like, oh, God.
Yeah, like he's hurting because he heard both sides of the story, basically.
Yeah.
And knowing that this man has repented, he does regret what he's done. Mm-hmm. But, it is what it is situation at this point. Yeah. And, like, to hear that the man's son is just that hatred, but then that longing for his father when he was a kid, that man that you see, like, the man that... Tom Cruise's character was introduced into the movie in a very brilliant way, by the way.
Oh, twice.
Twice, basically, yeah. So, like, you see this prick, pretty much this man that just wants to use women, turn into that small, scared boy that was left by his father. It was like, again, I'm getting chills a little bit. It's so wonderful, and you know that it's coming from the heart of not only the actor because he's gone through something like that, but also from the understanding of the director to let him get to that place,
Yeah, because he had the confidence in him as an actor. And also the two introductions we have to make mention. Mm-hmm. Because in the film, it's safe to say that Tom Cruise is the biggest star of the entire film.
He is.
And this is how they introduce him. Because in the film the introduction is set to Amy Mann covering one. Mm-hmm. And you see Tom Cruise on a really crappy television promoting Seduce and Destroy as the camera moves in. That's how you introduce your biggest star. And then the second time you see him again when he is at his...
on stage, right?
Yeah, on a stage promoting Seduce and Destroy at a convention.
And it's shitty still. It's like...
But it's presented as if it's like, set to, I'm going to terribly mispronounce it, Osa Sprach Sarusa, the 2001 theme. And he's like flexing his muscles and the light.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It
was still very shitty, like for this man who gives like such a big production. But I don't mean Tom Cruise, I meant the character, like this big production, like trying to act bigger than life. He still seemed pretty shitty and small, like compared to quality, I should say. Yeah. So it's like, and which is funny because like I think the director fought the production or the companies like because they wanted to promote it as a Tom Cruise film, right?
Yes,
and he ended up
no.
Yeah, he ended up editing it himself because
what he would do
was
because this is what happened after Paul Thomas Anderson made Boogie Nights, which was this big critical and commercial success that everybody wanted to work with him. New Line Cinema gave him carte blanche to go and make the film that you want. You'll get final cut. Mm-hmm. And so he made Magnolia, which he thought he would never get that opportunity again to make a film like Magnolia. Mm-hmm. And of course, you definitely see reflected that he said also at the time that this was the best film he would ever make, for better or worse. And that when they were marketing the film, it's like, oh, you got Tom Cruise, we'll make it a Tom Cruise film. He's like, no, this is an ensemble piece because we have to mention, and I'm going to name drop these actors because they're all fantastic. Julianne Moore, and also most of them are Oscar winners or Oscar nominees. Julianne Moore, John C. Reilly, Jason Robards, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Melora Walters, William H. Macy, I mentioned a young kid, Jeremy Blackman, and not just that, but also in smaller roles, but also integral. Felicity Huffman, Alfred Molina,
I did not know that was him. I was like, what? It's so brilliant.
It's like, and the list goes on of all these wonderful actors in the film, and like this is their story as well. I mean, there's still more names are popping into my head as well. Melinda Dillon as well. They're all fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great ensemble movie. Yeah. Which is once I started watching Magnolia because I watched Life Itself first.
Yeah, and then because we'll put this out. Magnolia is one of my favorite films of all time. And it has aged differently for me when I saw it 20 years ago to now, where I was just amazed by the bravura filmmaking and how he would make the film. But as I was watching it, and bear in mind, when Paul Thomas Anderson, when this film came out, he was 29 years old. And it's just so astonishing and in my 20 years to be able to experience all that maturity and such. And with Life Itself, this is what we did differently. Because she's never seen Magnolia, but we did see Life Itself before, which we were really upset about. And so what we did differently was we'd usually watch the old film first and then the new film. In this case, it was the other way around.
Yeah, so it was interesting watching Magnolia first because...
Well, no, Life Itself first, and then Magnolia.
Whatever. Anyways, so you know what I'm trying to say. So watching Magnolia after Life Itself, that's what I was trying to say. After watching all that stuff, there was a point in the movie, not even like probably 10 minutes in, where I was like, so that's what Life Itself was trying to do.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of sad thinking like 10 minutes into the movie, that's where I realized what they were trying to do. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of made me just, I don't know, kind of be sad for the film a little bit. Yeah. But because it's like, again, it's, you know, the people who do like it, they like it. I'm not going to like hate on you for it. Like, I understand why you like it, but it just didn't hit the marks of, like you said, don't reference movies that are better than yours, you know? And one of the biggest references is the structure of Magnolia, you know? So it's like Life Itself trying to make that structure happen. Don't do it if you don't, if you can't make a good movie out of it, you know? And I will say this, I would buy the book Life Itself in an instant because I felt that it would have been better adapted as a book than a movie, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it like awarded like best script writing or something, like for something, not like an official like award or something like
Life
that.
Itself?
Yeah, wasn't it like something like that?
I have no idea, and I will have to say this: if it was, then what were the other? What other films were there that had a worse script than that? Which is astonishing because you know Mandy Patinkin, who was one of the actors.
I got the thing wrong. It's actually in 2016 Blacklist, a list of the best unproduced scripts of the year. Oh no, yeah. Wow. So that's what it was nominated.
Okay,
as.
Then something happened from, because the thing is, like, some things are better played out on the written page than it is in terms of being filmed.
And that's what I was telling you. It reminded me of a better book. If you guys don't know, there's this book called You, which also was produced into a TV show for Netflix.
Well, it was for Lifetime, and then because it was not that popular on Lifetime, it found its second life on Netflix.
Yeah, so like it reminded me of that because I love the book You. It's a really good thriller of like in the aspect of a stalker, and at first you're for him because you didn't realize he was a stalker until it starts going more into the movie, into the book, I should say. And when I was watching Life Itself, it felt that way. It was like, because from You, when it was adapted into a TV show, I was watching and I'm like, oh, ew, it's better as a book. That's how the movie felt like. I was like, oh, ew, this is better as a book. I haven't read the book, but I bet you this is better as a book. Yeah. You know?
I have to quickly then go into the acting of Life Itself, and that is, the thing is this, I used to be pretty harsh when it came to actors, and that is, this is a terrible performance and such. And the thing is, I believe in Life Itself, there are terrible performances. I think Oscar Isaac is incredibly hammy and over the top.
I disagree with you.
The thing though is this: it's the director's responsibility to get not only the best performances out of their actors, but to also do a service to them, to be able to reflect it and to be able to not embarrass the actor. So I'm watching and I go, I know Oscar Isaac isn't a bad actor, but I'm watching a director who's more focused on the theme, more focused on the narrative structure of the film, as opposed to getting performances out of the actors, good performances out of the actors, and it unfortunately suffers. And it's not just him. Olivia Wilde also, suffers from that too. You do get little glimpses of little moments of humanity, like from, say, Mandy Patinkin, but it feels distant because of how it's shot and how it's edited, where it feels like we're not watching people. We're not getting in touch with those people. We are watching ideas of people, ideas of the archetypes. We get those feelings of those as opposed to actual flesh and blood. It doesn't feel authentic.
That part I do agree with, but I'm definitely going to disagree with you with the acting part, because I think Oscar Isaac still acted his butt off and did amazing. Like that scene where he was just breaking down in his therapist's office, like I got chills from it, like, because I understood, I've been in that mental dark place before, so I get it. And it hit me, but then it does go into what you were saying about, like, there was something that was missing, but I still thought that the performances was servable, except that one segment with
In Spain?
In Spain.
With the
I think that
with
was
Mickey Rourke?
with Mickey Rourke.
There's an actor
With
whose
the
name I
Latino
can't
Mickey
recall, but he looks so similar to Mickey Rourke.
A little bit, yeah. Like, I mean, Antonio Banderas, you did great. You always do great with whatever you do, for the most part. But that for me was the worst acted segment. So, but everything else, I do disagree with you there. But I do understand why you feel that way, because there was a disconnect. There was something that was missing. It felt artificial, but they were acting their butt off for what they were given.
Yeah, I think
there's so much that actors can do with what they were given with.
And the director failed them because they didn't feel like, with John C. Reilly is not a cop. But I believe that he is this cop, and not just a cop, but also this lonely man who is looked down upon by his fellow, LAPD, LAPD officers. We got that. I believe that Philip Seymour Hoffman is Phil Parma, this man taking care of Earl. I believe in all of the relations. I believe in William H. Macy as Donnie, as this kid who was a genius, but then was his money taken away from his parents and such. It's like, I believe in the relationships and how the sins of the father, of the parents, come back to haunt the children, and the regret that some of these parents have, and how some of them, one wises up and one doesn't, which then leads me to the soundtrack. Magnolia the film is composed by, John Bryan, who is one of the most underrated film composers today, but has songs that were written by or covered by Amy Mann, who, to those who don't know Amy Mann, she, I highly recommend you check out, if you haven't already, The Assassination of Gianni Versace, developed by Ryan Murphy. And there's a moment in, I believe, the third or fourth episode where we follow Darren Chris's character, and they go to a bar, and you see Amy Mann cover Drive. So it's like, I want to go and shake Ryan Murphy's hand and be like, yeah, there's another guy who gets how awesome Amy Mann is. Not to mention the fact that in The Big Lebowski, she is the girlfriend of the nihilist who gets her coat taught off. But anyways, her songs and her singing, how it influences, and her writing, how it influences and drives Magnolia. Like the one that she covers, Three Dog Nights 1, or I should say Harry Nilsson's one, because he was the one who wrote the song. That you get that sense of how lonely these characters are, or how out of step they are with the world. And whether it's through the regrets that they've done, the regrets they have, I should say, the mistakes they've made, the loneliness that they feel, it's all reflected beautifully in it. And Paul Thomas Anderson marries the song with his frenetic style of filmmaking in terms of how the camera will move and how the edits are done and how the performances are. You are sapped right into the world, and you get a sense of who those characters are, what they're like, what their feelings are, their wants, and how frenetic it is. And then suddenly, cuts to Jim, slowly, eating his cereal, and how it's shot, and how alone he feels, that all he wants is to get in a relationship again, to find love. And you get that sense of it, as opposed to Life Itself, which is shoved down our throats with Bob Dylan.
The thing is, it's like, because you were just mentioning right now that some of the very good scenes from Magnolia, timing has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Magnolia was given the right amount of timing for us to sympathize with a character, or connect with them, or hate them, or whatever what we were supposed to do with that moment. Life Itself doesn't at all. You barely are able to make a judgment before there's another twist that happens. And talking about the music as well, it's like, I think that's something that both movies have in common, because in Life Itself, it was all Bob Dylan music. Am I wrong?
They kept covering the same song over and over, and they would also cover it in Spanish as well. But the thing is,
don't remember.
But here's the thing.
That's sad.
And there's a reason why, and that is, we are force-fed in the film about Bob Dylan, about his music, about how impactful it is.
Yeah.
But we never get that real sense of why. We are told, but we never feel it. And that is the thing, in filmmaking, and I also go by this too, and that is show, don't tell. And the thing is, we're told a lot in Life Itself, but we don't feel it. We don't get that oomph, that no matter what you feel about Magnolia, whether you love it like I do, or you hate it like Joel Siegel, you can't walk away from the film going, well, I don't get any sense of that from the director. you do get that sense that this is what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And with Dan Fogelman, because I want to, once again, make it perfectly clear that I do find Dan Fogelman to be, when it comes to his accomplishments as a director, I do find it questionable right now. But as a writer, I know that he has his heart in the right place. Mm-hmm. I know that the man
intentions
is talented.
His intentions are nothing but good. Like, there's some directors that you can just sense you're like, dude, you just want to do this just for the fame. You just want, like, you're good, but you just want to do this. Like, you don't care about the stories you're talking about.
Cynicism.
But you can tell that he cares. He cares, and he puts a lot of care into it, usually, in his work. Just like I talked about This Is Us, when it comes to, like, portraying characters in a good, like, correctly, like, with whether black characters or any, like, person of color. But in this movie, unfortunately, he did fail to put the same care. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I feel that he's an amazing director. I do. I think he's an amazing writer. But his strong, the guy who did Life Itself.
Amazing director?
But his strong suit is in TV. Mm-hmm. He's an amazing TV director. Mm-hmm. He's an amazing animation director. Did he direct or did he write? No. He wrote, right?
Just wrote.
Sorry. Yeah. He's an amazing writer for when it comes to animation and film as well. But when it comes to directing, the only good things that I've seen was in TV. And I think that's his strong suit. And I think he should, before trying to do movies again, he needs to find the structure that works in TV and get a team around him that will make him put that into film.
Mm-hmm. To follow the edge, as it were. And that is to, if you're going to do something complex, to really look at it and go, okay, how can I create a thorough line with this? So then that way, I'm not swamped up in my own. I mean, not to be blunt here, but be swamped up in my own bullshit, which it does happen. Many of the best directors do go through that. Many of the best writers do. That's why it's so difficult to direct a film and to write a film. And Paul Thomas Anderson in the documentary we watched, that he talked about it, where it's just the difficulties of getting that all out. I did want to conclude on one big compare and contrast with the films, and that is, in Life Itself, you see a mother dying of cancer, and she gives a speech. This is at the end of the film, which sums up Life Itself. Not just the film, but the theme of the film. Mm-hmm. And in Magnolia, you get a big speech on the deathbed of Earl Partridge, where he talks about how he cheated on his wife and how he wasn't there for Jack, wasn't there for Lily during this. And he talks about his regrets and such, and how one of the speech with the mother is concise. It feels like a movie speech. It feels like it was written. It doesn't feel like it's coming from her. Uh-huh. But the speech from Earl feels authentic. Every little stammers, and when he goes, blah, 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 how he trails off, how he can't remember things. Uh-huh. You are getting that sense of, this is a dying man who is rambling to Phil, saying everything that he can say before he dies. This might be the very last thing he can say. Mm-hmm. And it feels authentic. It feels like this is something that Paul experienced with his father, Ernie. And that's not to say that Dan Fogelman is somebody else. Birdcage. Dan Fogelman is somebody else. That Dan Fogelman didn't experience that with his mother. I'm fairly confident that he did have that talk with her. But one feels authentic.
Yeah.
Feels real. And the other feels like a movie.
Yeah. And actually, I am going to correct myself. I think I did say something wrong like a few minutes ago. Actually, Dan didn't even direct an episode of This Is Us.
He never did?
I'm looking at the credit list right now, because I could have, for some reason I thought he did, but on my list of people who directed, I don't see him on here. Mm-hmm. Guys, in the comment section, like, please let us know if he has directed. It seems like he has directed a movie before in 2015, but he's credited as a writer for the show. Yeah,
and you can
a creator,
and let us know, and definitely talk about it at SOSN Podcast. That's at Twitter and Instagram. So we conclude with this, and that is, I also want to point out, I love big dramatic ensemble films.
Yes, you do.
I love those type of movies. I love ensemble films. It could be from 12 Angry Men to the works of Robert.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, from the works of Robert Altman. That I just love ensemble films. So something like with Life Itself is tailor-made for somebody like me, especially stories that span 4 generations. Such, I'm there. And because, as you can also tell, because Magnolia is a masterpiece. I mean, one of the many masterpieces Paul Thomas Anderson has made. Paul Thomas Anderson is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And while watching the movies, it's fascinating watching somebody who is more confident in his abilities to direct his actors, stage the scenes, his confidence to get his vision out there with his collaborative team. And then the other who feels lost.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think he's lost whatsoever when it comes to writing. He might have been lost as a director, though, because from my understanding, it seems like he doesn't have that much experience as a director, which, again, like it goes into what I said, like beautiful screenplay. Like it seems like it was voted like as a good like screenplay or whatever.
On that list of the unproduced
on the list,
scripts,
yeah, unproduced scripts. And that reason why I got, I'm like, this would be such a beautiful book, but he needed the right team to execute it in the big screen, just like he had the right team for the TV show to execute it beautifully. You know, it's just like, I don't want to call him a failed director just yet. I'm like, he should try again, but get the right team around you. I have enough confidence in him that I think he could create something beautiful. But this wasn't it.
Yeah, it's ultimately what I would look at it with Dan Fogelman is don't take the lashes that you've received from life itself, and the critiques, whether from us or from anybody else. And that is, and not to look back at it with anger. It's so easy to be angry and upset at this because you got a pretty significant critical, you were literally turned into a punching bag.
Yeah.
And it hurts. But don't take them to heart. Take them to your mind and just to think about what else that you can do to move forward with that, because there is talent there. Dan Fogelman is talented.
He's extremely talented. I think he's an amazing writer.
There is a line where Roger Ebert talked about Death to Smoochie, where he said, when he was interviewed on Jon Stewart's show, the Daily Show in 2006, where he stated that it did take a great amount of talent to make something this awful. So, and that was directed by Danny DeVito. He himself is a talented man, a director and actor.
I don't think the talent is being disputed here.
Nope.
Like it's just, this movie wasn't it. It didn't hit the mark. But you know what? Like, take it as constructive criticism. Hear what people are talking about, why it didn't work for them, and realize that the stuff that they were talking about, you have done it before and it has worked. So try to figure out the link there, and whatever doesn't translate well with TV might translate well in movies, or and vice versa. Try to figure out that link. Find the right people around you.
And that ultimately, I would recommend both films. And they're both different ways. Magnolia is a masterpiece, one of the best films of 1999, one of the best films I've ever seen. Life itself is not only the worst film of 2018, but one of the worst films I've ever seen. But I would still recommend both. And quite frankly, if you guys want to compare and contrast, let us know. Leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Go to SOSN Podcast, Instagram and Twitter, to let us know and like what you guys think. Or if you want to compare and contrast it with other, dramatic, ensemble films too, definitely let us know. Yeah,
definitely. Check us out, like on, whether if you're listening to this on YouTube, we have it on Podbean, we have it on Spotify. Definitely let us know in any of those platforms, on Twitter as well, Instagram, all the same handle, SOSN Podcast.
Yeah, excellent. So our next episode, well, it's not going to be about life itself, but it's about something. It is something that we're watching. I know I'm terribly leading up to it.
Very terribly.
We are going to cover it. We're covering the miniseries with Tim Curry as Pennywise, released in the 90s.
Fuck.
And then we're going to fast forward to the year 2017, and we're going to review it. And then, because we're not just going to do 2, we're going to do 3. We're going to watch It Chapter 2. That's going to be released soon.
I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not at the same time.
Because...
if you guys don't know, I'm... Shut up. See, David's having this face. Like, fuck you, man. I love you. But, like, I'm really terrified of clowns. Not just, like, the cute clowns, whatever. I can handle those, whatever. Just stay 10 feet away from me. I don't have to, like, throw anything at you. I'm fine. But these movies, like, my hands are sweating right now, guys. Like, I can't. I'm really terrified.
And here's the thing. The miniseries is, I believe, 3 hours long. And the total combined length of It, the first film, and It Chapter 2 is, I believe, going to be 5 hours.
I'm gonna die.
I think.
I'm gonna
Yeah, because the latest
die.
film, I think, is close to 3 hours.
But I will say, we did watch the first one together, and I loved it.
First It. Not the miniseries, but the movie.
I did watch the miniseries when I was younger, and there's a funny story behind that, but I'll say that in the next podcast.
Exactly.
But it's gonna be interesting. I'll just say that.
She is.
I can't. I'm
shaking.
fidgeting right now. I can't.
Yep. So this is something old, something new. This is David.
And this is Salome really just not having it now.
Yes. And just remember, and just to let you all know, this was a twist, because in Life Itself, this was an unreliable narrator, and that actually, we hated Magnolia and loved Life Itself.
Dun, dun, dun.
No, wait, sorry, that's another unreliable narration. Sorry. All right, love you guys.
Bye.